Every fitness influencer online will tell you that you can both build muscle and get better at running simultaneously, and technically they're not wrong. But there's a few things that they never tell you. The main reason why most people end up spinning their wheels for months and months on end. So in this video, we're going to go through 3 main points, and these are going to help you overcome these issues. Firstly, finding your limiters and setting your goals. Number 2 is going to be the interference effect. And number 3 is residual training effects. I'm Jack. I've been in the fitness industry for over 4 years. I've been training for over 10 years myself. And I've helped hundreds of people just like you who are frustrated with hearing opposing views on the best ways to build muscle, to get better at running, trying to piece together all the little bits of information they hear online and trying to be a part of the new hybrid fitness craze. So many people that I work with struggle to apply the information and the knowledge that they have accrued over time in the correct way so that they can get stronger, fitter and faster on the road and on the trail. I made it my mission to provide clear and concise information that will help you get better, look better and run faster. One of the key parts of this whole process is actually organising your training week in a structure that aligns perfectly with your goal. Whether running or lifting is your priority, you want to make sure that your training week is structured in a way that suits that. So I'm putting together a free guide with a 4-week program, not only aligns to your goal, but also to the amount of training time you have available. If this sounds good to you, then in the description, there'll be a link below to join the wait list and I'll send it over to you as soon as it's done. So before I go into these 3 main points, unless you are a complete beginner at both lifting and or running, then you will not get better at both simultaneously for very long. We only have so much time available to train, and we also only have so much capacity to absorb training stress and adapt and get better over time. So if you try and do too much at once, you're just on a fast track to burning out and getting injured. And that means we need to prioritize either lifting or running at any one point in time, whilst the other goes on maintenance mode. And this is where proper planning and periodization comes in. But in order to know how to plan and periodize and what we're going to do first, we need to know what our limiters are, and then you can set goals from there. So when it comes to running, our limiters can typically be VO2 max, lactate threshold, running economy, it could be structural issues. When it comes to lifting, it could be mobility, it could be muscle mass, and it could be technique. So these are just a number of things that we can highlight as key areas to work on first, as we're always going to be limited by the weakest link in the chain. Now, firstly, you need to identify what your goal is. So is your goal to get better at running and your gym is there to support the running? Is the goal to be as good at lifting as you can, whether that's strength or muscle mass, and have running to support it, to do your cardio, or just because you enjoy running? And then we can dive a little bit deeper into that, and we could maybe set a goal that would be based off a specific time frame because you have a competition coming up. Maybe it's a triathlon, or it's a running race, or you've got a powerlifting competition, or you want to do a photo shoot, or you just want to get shredded for summer. But having these are going to help us design the overall training plan. So for instance, if you have a race coming up in 12 weeks time, it's pretty fair to say that running is definitely going to be the priority, which means anything lifting related is pretty much going to go on maintenance mode, and the running will become the priority. And then when we can look at that, we look at what is limiting our running performance and we design the program accordingly. And we can go through that process over and over again through each training cycle and each training block, constantly working on the limiting factors depending on what our goal is over time. But structuring our plan this way means that we are emphasizing certain qualities whilst others are on maintenance mode, which means we aren't just spinning our wheels and not getting better at anything all at once. This brings me on to point number 2, which is the interference effect. Now, this is something that I'm sure you have heard mentioned time and time again. It's often sort of used as a scaremongering tactic to say, oh, don't do cardio because it will kill your lifting gains, or that if you lift and try and run, it will nullify the stimulus of one or the other. Now, if you're at the extreme ends of being like a top end bodybuilder and a really good marathon runner with insane training volumes, sure, maybe there's going to be an issue. But personally, most of us, no matter how hard we try, never going to be elite in any of those categories. So for me, firstly, I'm happy to just accept there is going to be a little bit of interference, and I might not be the biggest I will possibly ever be, but I might be able to get 90% of the way there. And I might not be the fastest I'm ever going to be, but I'm going to be 10 kilos heavier and I'm going to look a hell of a lot better. And I don't really want to be as fast as I can if that means that I'm going to be relatively weak and not have much muscle mass. For me, that trade-off isn't personally worth it. So that's the first thing I'd consider. The second thing I'd consider is that as much as the interference effects may exist to some degree on a physiological level with what's going on inside the body, I think more of the issue is in terms of distributing training stress and what we can actually adapt to. Now, whilst we can improve our capacity to adapt to training over time, generally speaking, there is a limit to how much training we can do and actually adapt to. So if we are trying to maximize strength training and building muscle and maximize running volume, we just run into a barrier of building up too much fatigue that we can't recover from, which leads to injuries and burnout, lack of motivation, all these different issues that arise because it's just too much for what we can handle. So I think as much as anything, that is the biggest limiting factor, and that's where the interference comes, and that's what we need to worry about. And again, that reverts back to my previous point of why planning and periodization and setting proper goals for each training block is super important. And this brings me on to my third and final point, which is residual training effects. Now, essentially, what this means is how fast will a quality, so strength, speed, power, mobility, endurance, how fast will that quality disappear if we don't train it at all, is essentially what we're talking about. Now, you might think, well, why would we bother talking about that? Well, when we think about putting something on maintenance, it's quite helpful to know what the minimum effective amount of training we can do to improve, what the minimum amount we can do to maintain. Because when we're trying to train multiple things at once, like I mentioned before, there's only so much capacity we have. So for instance, we know that residual training effect of strength is about 30 days, which in theory means we could do 1 to 3 hard sets of a back squat every 30 days and would maintain strength within the back squat. Okay, there's going to be some differences person to person, and that might be affected by fatigue that's accrued at the time, but generally speaking, we can do a lot less work to maintain a quality than you actually think, and it requires a lot less work to maintain a quality than it takes to improve a quality, which means when we look at our training plan across a whole year, we might have 12 weeks where we're only doing a few hard sessions of strength work, but when we shift into the next phase, we actually do a lot more to improve on it. But as you can see, we're not trying to maximize both running and lifting at the same time, because that's, again, where we run into issues. So understanding residual training effects, how much volume, intensity, frequency, and how we can manipulate them to apply to each individual training block, and then we can look at that on a broader scale. So essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring up the running while the lifting maintains, then we bring up the lifting while the running maintains, and we just repeat that process time and time again. And when we look over the span of years, we've actually developed an athlete who is really good at running, who is really good at lifting. We haven't achieved this ability to be good at running and good at lifting just in 12 weeks. Actually, it's an approach that's happened over years. And actually, if you start to look at some of the influencers you may follow who are into this hybrid fitness, who they run and they lift, you'll actually find they either come often from a bodybuilding background, or they come from a running background and they've got into lifting, or the bodybuilders have got into running, which means they've already spent years, if not decades, building muscle mass, building strength. And now they've introduced running and they've managed to just do enough to maintain their strength, and they paint it out like they've been doing it together the whole time, which isn't necessarily true. So if you want to emulate and you want to run and you want to lift at the same time, like I do, which is absolutely great, and it is possible, but not quite in the way that you might think, and not quite in the way that you've been told by influencers. If you did enjoy this video and you want to see more from me, follow me over on Instagram at jacktate_coach. And again, if you are interested and you want help designing an optimal training week that fits in with your goal, depending on whether your priority is running or your priority is lifting, then hit the link in the description and join the waitlist, and I'll send it out to you as soon as I possibly can. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.